Hey everybody, and welcome back to He Works Hard for the Honey. If you're anything like me, this is the day we've all been waiting for. Made the hour-and-a-half trip up to Albion, Maine to visit Swan's Honey and pick up 2 nukes, which is always fun. I've got a little bit of a video to post later of the 30 or so loose bees that were in the car with me for the hour-and-a-half ride home. Which is actually, I think, a little exposure. It's kind of nice. I haven't had loud bees buzzing my head, except that one, for about a year now. So just to catch everybody up, I think we went over this in a video within the last month or so, but we finished last season with no live colonies, but we did and do have just a ton of resources. Wax frames that are filled like this, as well as full honey frames that weren't used, and I've pulled out some good ones, some really good looking honey frames. Oh, as I trip over my smoker, like this. And all of this means that the bees in our Swan's Honey nuke box right here are just not going to have to do all of the work that goes into collecting, creating the wax, building out the frames, collecting the honey, and capping it. This is going to be a totally different season this year than we had last year, because we had enough resources that I'm expecting we're going to put the bees in here, and I've got 3 honey frames on the bottom. A nuke will come with probably 3 frames of brood and 2 frames of honey and pollen from where they came from. So it comes with bees sort of out of every stage of life. There'll be eggs, there'll be brood, there'll be capped brood, and then their own resources as well. I'm going to insulate them with some honey. Up in the top box, I'm going to add some honey and some filled out comb, where I expect that the queen will be laying her eggs in the center. And I'm imagining that we're going to be able to start putting some honey supers on these in about 2 weeks and collecting the wax and honey for He Works Hard for the Honey. I know that our friend Kelly won the contest last year and is due a sample. And hopefully, as we actually start to have a product, we'll be doing very similar giveaways. I'm really looking forward to it. But for now, let me finish gearing up, and let's open this nuke. I'm excited to be taping and to actually have some bees to show you guys. Last year I had talked a lot about the fact, I think I kept using the term, it was a tale of 2 hives, that these were sort of our chill West Coast bees. They were not actually West Coast bees, but they were package bees from Georgia, which were extremely docile. I was able to go through and do hive inspections a lot of times without any gear. I don't expect to do that this year. And then I had Hive 2, which was our local Maine bees from an apiary up north. It was Swans again, an extremely healthy colony that was a little more territorial. And I'm imagining that actually both hives are going to be like that this year. That our local Maine bees are working on a very short season. And I'm going to just puff these guys with a little more smoke. I'm sorry that our bees are working on a shorter season and aware that they have to sort of make and protect everything they need for the winter, you know, usually between the end of June and the beginning of October, that they have to make sure everything they need to get through the long, and as we saw this past year, the particularly harsh winters that we can have up here. I think winter was pretty harsh everywhere this past year. But I'm going to crack this open, and I'm going to get to moving everybody in. And here they are. Great goodness. I don't know if you all can see that. They did not especially appreciate being cooped up, it looks like. I'm gonna move us in a little closer. Trying to make sure that my middle is covered up. And we're just gonna start taking frames and putting them in here. The only thing I'm really gonna try to be careful about is trying not to crush my queen. But hopefully, if these are anything like the bees last year, they were just ridiculous builders. Look out, everybody. And so I sort of no sooner got them, move everybody, no sooner got them in the actual hives than they were filling them out. And fantastic. We have a full honey frame there. This hive is going to come with a lot of its own resources. We want to make sure there's some good spacing, and that's especially important at the beginning. That we want a little bit of space at the sides, but otherwise we pretty much want these frames flush. I mentioned I am putting the honey frames from Hive 2 in there. We aired them out a little bit. There's still a pretty good amount of mold on them, and what I've been told by master beekeepers in the area is that they'll figure it out. They will get in there, and just by the very process of getting in there, it's being difficult. Flapping their wings and getting some air. On the comb. Oh wow, lots of capped brood here. Excellent, with a little bit of honey at the corners. Very much what we saw last year when the hives were in full tilt. and I'm trying to keep an eye out for my queen on such a healthy set of frames. I'm not really thinking I'm going to see her. But I do know we want to kind of look towards the middle. The last frame, this frame, and the next. She's going to have a longer abdomen. I see a drone there, which this time last season I was confusing for queens. She's going to have a much longer abdomen. Alright, there's a little bit of comb at the bottom that bees will usually build supersedure cells or additional queen cells there. We're going to want to get in and get rid of those pretty early on in the going, so that they don't sort of dethrone their queen and cause a swarm. Given the amount of bees on this next frame, I'm guessing that the queen may be on there. So I want to be real gentle. Oh yeah, we've already got a swarm cell or two. Let's see if I can just pick those off, and they're never real happy with me when I do that, but this is, like I said, a very healthy frame of bees. Well, I can't very quickly eyeball the queen. But we do have a great laying pattern here. So happy with that. It's a good sign that we've got a very healthy laying queen, which is important. As you can see all around me, there's a pretty healthy population. Need one more frame here. And then we will get to Hive 2. What is just correct my space here a little bit. Make some room for this. And there's sort of a rule, what we call bee space. Now, bee needs 3/8 of an inch to move around in the hive comfortably. So anything over 3/8 of an inch, it will fill, and anything under 3/8 of an inch, it's going to use an adhesive that it creates called propolis. It's going to nail that down. It's going to fill it or shut it. And this is to make sure that the hive isn't drafty. Ooh. Oh boy. And true to form, they've gone around the side of the box here. And whoa. And kind of glued this frame to the wall. So it's taking a little extra work. Let's make sure we don't. No, and they ran out of space to build, and so they just kept building. actually going to take this frame and try to make sure I don't squish anybody with it as best I can. Common problem last year, getting my finger stuck under those frame edges. And what I'm going to do is put this second box up on top. And we're out. So I'm going to have to restart that smoker. In slowly from the side. I hate that crunch. And again, we've got wax frames where I expect the queen will come up and lay eggs. And I've insulated it with a couple of honey frames at the edges. I'm going to just take some of these wax frames out. Give us a little space down the middle there. And going to give these ladies just a couple of, and they sort of pour like sand right in there. And if all has gone well, I'm going to throw the top back on here after I throw these frames in. And these bees that are out here are going to start to smell their queen in a good area for them to live. And they're going to start traveling back in. I knew that was going to happen eventually. I'm glad I caught her before she stung me. They're getting up my sweater a little bit. All right. We're going to contain the space again. We want to keep these pretty nice and tight. I'm going to throw the internal roof on, and we're going to close this up and let them start to settle in. Now in a little bit, I'm going to come out here. I have some pollen patties, and I'm going to make some syrup, which is 2 parts water, equal parts water and sugar. Just to, obviously, this is, if you've ever moved, a stressful process. just as much for the bees as it would be for any of us. We're going to give them a little time to sort of settle in, a little time that they don't really have to forage, and some time to kind of start developing and filling out the hive. Thanks guys, give me a moment, and I'll see you at Hive 2.